In major events, it's often the smallest details that determine their success or failure. For example, consider the 1986 Challenger disaster, where a cheap O-ring malfunctioned, leading to the tragic loss of 7 lives and hundreds of millions of dollars. Similarly, a tiny blood clot, barely visible under a microscope, can fatally obstruct blood flow to the brain. Even a small, unnoticed patch of ice on the road can cause a vehicle to lose control and result in a catastrophic crash. These seemingly minor factors can have devastating consequences for significant endeavors. Marriage certainly fits into the category of vital undertakings. I, for one, hold my marriage in the highest regard. I've been married for just over 8 years to my wife, Megan, and we share two incredible boys, Ethan and Liam. Although I never earned a college degree, my skills as a mechanic have allowed me to provide a stable and comfortable life for my family in a spacious home. The long hours at work are exhausting, but the financial stability it provides is worth the effort. My marriage has always been my proudest achievement, and I've worked tirelessly to support my family. Unfortunately, it's often the smallest things that unravel the most important commitments. For me, it was a tiny blood vessel in my brain that set off a series of events leading to the collapse of everything. Positioned dangerously close to another vessel, it caused swelling that triggered a debilitating migraine. I had dealt with migraines before, but on this particular day, the pain hit with an intensity that left me incapacitated. The familiar symptoms returned: sensitivity to light, sounds that grew unbearably loud, and overpowering smells that churned my stomach. Caught off guard, I realized I didn't have my Imitrex inhaler to manage the pain. I had pills, but they weren't as effective and needed time to kick in. Unable to function, I stumbled into my boss's office to tell him I couldn't continue working. He immediately sprang into action, calling his secretary, Rebecca, and urging her to take me home. "You can't drive in this state. Get him out of here now," he said firmly. With Rebecca's help, I managed to make it out of the office and into the bright, unforgiving sunlight. Shielding my eyes, I leaned against the wall as Rebecca went to retrieve her car. Every step felt unbearable as my head throbbed. When she returned, she guided me into the passenger seat, and we began the drive to my house. The light streaming through the windows was too much for me to bear, so I shut my eyes tightly, trying to block it out. The sounds around me blended into an overwhelming hum, and even the faintest odors were nauseating. Thankfully, Rebecca knew the way to my home, sparing me from the need to give directions. The drive felt agonizingly slow, but eventually we arrived. Rebecca helped me out of the car and supported me as we made our way inside. Once in the kitchen, I instructed her to retrieve my inhaler from the refrigerator. She handed it to me and held it steady as I used it, inhaling deeply and feeling the medication begin to work. Next, I asked Rebecca to help me to the sofa in the adjacent living room. Once there, I requested that she close the blinds and turn off all the lights, which she did without hesitation. The darkness was a welcome relief, and after a few minutes, the worst of the pain began to subside. I thanked Rebecca for her kindness and reassured her that I'd be fine on my own. Grateful for the quiet, I drifted into a restless sleep. I woke later to the sound of voices. The room was still shrouded in darkness, suggesting it was later in the day. As I gathered my bearings, I realized the migraine had completely vanished, leaving behind a lingering soreness but no trace of the excruciating pain. From the dimness, I recognized the voices of my wife, Megan, and her friend, Samantha. It didn't seem like they knew I was home. The house was quiet and dark, and they were speaking in hushed but animated tones. Megan must have assumed I was still out or hadn't noticed Rebecca's car parked outside. Unseen and unnoticed, I remained silent, curiosity piqued by their conversation. Maybe I could surprise them both. I rose quietly, planning to sneak to the door and make my presence known. But as I focused on their conversation, the words stopped me in my tracks. "Come on, Megan, spill it. How was it? Was it as good as last time? Don't hold back. Give me the details," Samantha urged eagerly. "It was incredible. I felt like I was in heaven," Megan admitted with a tone so shameless it made my skin crawl. "Even better than before. Honestly, mind-blowing. The best experience ever. Even better than with Daniel? Better than your husband? Samantha asked, shocked. Absolutely. I loved Daniel. But he never made me feel like that, Megan said, her voice tinged with excitement. He wouldn't even let me do half the things Jason does. He'd think I'm a. But Jason? He knows exactly what I like, and I can't wait for the next time. Samantha's voice grew serious. Aren't you worried? What if Daniel finds out? Have you thought about what could happen? Megan scoffed. Daniel will never know. And even if he did, so what? He's too nice to leave me. He wouldn't risk losing the boys. I'd take them in a heartbeat with the right lawyer. Samantha sounded uneasy. This isn't like you, Megan. You're playing with fire. I think you're making a big mistake. Megan dismissed her concerns. I love Daniel truly, but I'm not giving up what I have with Jason. I need both the passion and the stability, and I won't let go of either. As her words settled in, the pain of my fading migraine was replaced by a sharp, unbearable ache in my chest. My heart pounded so furiously that it felt like my ribs would shatter. My breathing grew shallow, and a ringing filled my ears. I gripped the doorframe for support, trying to steady myself. Slowly, the suffocating wave of emotions passed, but in its place, anger began to rise, hot and unrelenting. With new resolve, I straightened and stepped into the illuminated kitchen, breaking their conversation mid-flow. Samantha was the first to notice me. Her face froze in shock, her mouth snapping shut. Megan turned to follow her gaze. Her expression morphed from surprise to dread, then twisted into anger. How much did you hear? Megan demanded, rising to confront me. Why were you lurking and spying on me? I met her glare with a stony silence, glancing briefly at Samantha, who quickly stood and grabbed her purse. I need to go. Mark and I can watch the boys if you need some time, she mumbled hastily, avoiding my eyes as she fled through the side door. Once alone, I turned back to Megan, my wife of 8 years, the woman I had trusted and loved unconditionally. 8 years of memories shattered in mere moments. There would be no forever for us. Megan had destroyed that tonight. Where are the boys? I asked coldly. While you were busy entertaining your lover, who was looking after them? Or were they left alone while you indulged yourself? Megan's face contorted in anger, an ugliness that seemed to peel back any lingering facade of beauty. The boys are with Emily. Samantha and I went shopping, and Mark stayed with them. I wasn't with anyone else, just her. She crossed her arms, a smirk of triumph forming, as if she'd just outsmarted me. I shook my head, disgusted. I came home early with a debilitating migraine. My boss, George, asked Rebecca to drive me because I couldn't handle the light. I've been here all day, Megan, right here. And what I heard, my voice trailed off as nausea surged through me. Without waiting for a response, I rushed to the bathroom, barely managing to hold back the contents of my stomach. My body heaved violently, and I collapsed onto the cool tile floor. Slowly, my breathing steadied, and the wave of nausea receded. After splashing water on my face, I returned to the kitchen, my body still trembling. Megan sat by the window, her figure silhouetted in the dim light. Ignoring her, I muttered, I'm going to get the boys and put them to bed. I brushed past her, heading next door to Mark and Samantha's house. Knocking softly on their back door, I entered to find Mark and Samantha seated at the kitchen table. Mark's face was a mix of pity and anger, while Samantha couldn't meet my eyes. I'm here for the boys, I said curtly, brushing past them toward the living room. In the next room, Emily was sitting with Ethan and Liam, helping them complete a puzzle. She greeted me warmly. Hey, Mr. Taylor, are you here for them? Yes, Emily. Could you grab their jackets? I replied, my voice flat. As she left, I looked at my boys, their laughter oblivious to the pain and betrayal clouding my thoughts. This used to be a scene of pure joy. Now, it was stained by selfishness and deceit. Returning to the kitchen, I fixed Samantha with a cold glare. Did you know? I demanded. How long have you known my wife was cheating on me? Did it amuse you to keep me in the dark? To see me play the fool? Mark's face darkened as he shot a withering look at Samantha. I swear, Daniel, I didn't know. If I had, I would have told you. This is disgusting, You don't deserve this. I nodded at Mark, appreciating his sincerity, but turned to Samantha with nothing but bitterness. Thanks, Samantha. Thank you for helping Megan make me the laughingstock of the neighborhood. Just then, Emily reappeared with my boys, their small hands clutching cookies. I forced a smile, praying they hadn't overheard my words. Thanks, Emily. Let's head home, boys. As we walked back, the weight of betrayal pressed on me. My once unshakable family felt irreparably fractured. Remorse for her actions? No. Megan didn't regret what she had done, only that she had been caught and that I had learned the truth. Shaking my head, I sank into the plush armchair she had gifted me for our 5th anniversary. I used to cherish that chair, but now it was just another piece of furniture, stripped of its meaning. Please let me explain, Megan said, her voice trembling. Our story doesn't have to end here. We can salvage what we had. If you'd only try to understand, we could move forward together. Her tone was familiar, the same one she used when she wanted something she knew I wouldn't agree with. I met her gaze, my voice steady despite the tension coursing through me. Can you promise me it's over? That you'll never see him again? My hands gripped the armrests of the chair tightly as I waited for her response. Tears welled in her eyes, but she remained silent. That silence spoke louder than words ever could. She wouldn't stop. I had heard her conversation with Samantha. She wanted both paths, the comfort of our life together and the passion with Jason. She wouldn't let me stand in her way. This is your decision, Megan, I said, rising to my feet. After dinner, I'll tuck the boys into bed. Tomorrow, I'll pack my things and stay with my brother. Then we'll figure out where to go from there. Without waiting for a response, I left the room, retreating to the kitchen, a place that felt oddly comforting amidst the chaos. It's strange how mundane spaces like the kitchen become sanctuaries in moments of despair. As Megan busied herself preparing dinner, I spent time with the boys in the playroom, losing myself in their innocent laughter and games. When Megan called us to the table, I helped the boys wash up, clinging to the simplicity of these everyday tasks. Dinner was lively, the boys chatting and laughing as they enjoyed their meal. Their energy and joy were a stark contrast to the quiet tension between their parents. Megan and I were lost in thought, each consumed by the weight of what lay ahead. Childhood innocence, I mused, is so fleeting. Why do kids always rush to grow up, unaware of the burdens that adulthood brings? After dinner, Megan cleaned the kitchen while I took the boys upstairs to bed. We shared stories until their laughter gave way to yawns, and they drifted into peaceful slumber. Watching them sleep, my heart ached, knowing these moments might never be the same again. Downstairs, I sank into a chair, my head heavy with exhaustion. My world was slipping through my fingers, unraveling beyond my control. I had loved Megan deeply, but her words replayed in my mind like a haunting refrain. He makes me feel things you never could. There was no coming back from that. The love I once felt for her had extinguished. Megan entered the room, sitting down across from me. We need to talk, she said quietly. I understand you're upset, but please try to see this from my perspective. What I have with Jason, it's purely physical. The allure of something new, something exciting, it's intoxicating. But it doesn't mean I don't love you. He's nothing more than a distraction, Daniel. It will end soon, and we can go back to the way things were. You just need to give me time. Her words flowed, but I struggled to grasp them. She wanted time? Time to continue her affair, to have her cake and eat it too? Was she delusional or just manipulative? Either way, my response was firm. No, Megan, you're the one who doesn't understand. There is no us. It's you and him. That's all there is now. We're finished. It's over. This isn't up for negotiation. After 8 years of marriage, how could you possibly believe I'd condone your betrayal? But I love you, Daniel, she pleaded, her voice breaking. You're the only man I've ever truly loved. Jason doesn't mean anything to me. I don't even like him. Please try to understand. For the sake of our marriage and our family, give me time. Please, baby. I shook my head, my voice devoid of emotion. Take all the time you need, Megan. Tomorrow, I'm calling a lawyer. We'll divide everything equally. and I'll make sure the boys are cared for. I don't want to hurt you the way you hurt me. I just want this to end." Her response came like a slap in the face. "Then damn you," she hissed, her voice filled with venom. "No debors. I'll fight you every step of the way. I'll take everything you have, and I'll make sure you never get custody of the boys. I'll restrict your visitation rights so much you'll barely see them. And I'll still have Jason. You can't stop me, Daniel. Don't you forget that." Her words hit me like a blow to the chest, and I stared at her in stunned disbelief. Absorbing Megan's threat, it hit me like a wave. This marriage had ended long before tonight. The anger and disrespect she displayed weren't sudden. They were calculated and deliberate. If she had ever cared about sparing me pain, she wouldn't have embarked on this path in the first place. She would have ended her affair long before it reached this point. Instead, she anticipated my eventual discovery and, rather than stopping, seemed to ensure it inflicted the maximum hurt. Love had no place in this dynamic, only greed and her desire to humiliate me. As my anger simmered, I noticed Megan's expression change. The venomous satisfaction that had been etched into her features shifted to fear. She realized she had gone too far, but it was too late. My words came sharp and cold. "I have just one thing to say, Megan. When you corner a rat, it fights back. It fights to the bitter end. If you leave it no escape, you force it to retaliate. You should have thought about that before you pushed me this far. But now you've done it, and you'll pay the price." Her voice broke as she tried to recover. "Please, Daniel, I don't want this. But I'm left with no choice. I love you. I'll do anything to keep you from leaving. If you can't understand and accept this, I'll fight you. You'll have no choice but to stay. I know you love me and the boys too much to walk away. You'll stay, Daniel. I know you will." I stared at her for a moment, letting her words sink in before delivering my response. "Goodbye, Megan. Let the boys know I'll see them when I can. I'll pack a few things now and come back for the rest later when we can arrange a time." Without waiting for her reply, I went upstairs and hastily packed a bag. Just the essentials, a few clothes, toiletries, nothing more. 8 years of marriage reduced to bitter memories, but I clung to the thought of my 2 wonderful sons. They were my focus now. When I came back down, Megan was sitting by the kitchen door, as if she were ready to make one last attempt. "Daniel, please reconsider. I'm begging you. There's no need for this. Just promise me you'll end things with him. You'll never see him again. If you say it, maybe there's still hope," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I can't. I just can't," I said flatly, pushing past her. My hands trembled, and I fought the overwhelming urge to lash out in anger. Instead, I clenched my fists and kept walking. "I'll visit the boys in the evenings after work, so they won't notice anything for now." I swung the door open and stepped outside. It slammed shut behind me as I threw my bag into the back seat of my truck and climbed in. Backing out of the driveway, I reached for my phone and called Eric, my brother, who lived about 10 miles away. Eric had been living alone since his wife left him 2 years ago for another man. She vanished without a trace, and Eric never bothered to file for divorce. Instead, he seemed indifferent, burying his pain in drinks with his buddies most nights. Though I tried to talk to him about his drinking, nothing changed. He rarely got drunk, but he was always buzzed, likely a way of numbing old wounds. When Eric picked up, I explained the situation. Without hesitation, he told me to come over. By the time I arrived, Eric wasn't home yet, but I knew where he kept the spare key, under the flower pot on the porch. Letting myself in, I was greeted by the same immaculately tidy space I remembered. Eric was compulsively neat, and his home reflected that. Somehow, the familiar order of his house felt like a small comfort amid the chaos of my life. I grabbed a few beers from his fridge and settled in as he'd suggested. By the time Eric came home, I was already tipsy. We didn't waste words. I told him Megan and I had fought, and he joined me in finishing the beers I brought. Despite his reputation for drinking, Eric stayed level-headed, offering his support as a brother. "You don't deserve this, Daniel," he said firmly. "You'll get through it, and I'm here for you every step of the way." The next morning, I woke to a punishing hangover, my head pounding with regret. I stumbled to the bathroom and let cold water wash over me in the shower, hoping to clear my mind. Staying drunk wasn't the answer. I had my boys to think about, and I couldn't let them see me like this. After pulling myself together, I searched for Eric. I found a note on the counter explaining that he had gone to work, which didn't surprise me. We both worked Saturday shifts. Eric and I were employed by a company that rented heavy construction equipment to major contractors across the state. Our reputation as top-tier mechanics brought in clients from far and wide. The machinery had to keep running, no matter the challenges. Long hours were part of the job, but the income allowed me to provide for my family, a responsibility I couldn't neglect. Supporting Megan's pride and joy, our spacious home, had always been my focus. I saw it as a haven for our family, a symbol of the security I worked so hard to maintain. But Megan saw it differently. To her, the house wasn't a home. It was leverage, a safety net for potential divorce proceedings. She coveted it along with my earnings, not to safeguard our family, but to fund indulgences for her lover. Lavish clothing, Victoria's Secret lingerie, and who knows what else. I turned up the faucet, letting the sound drown out these unsettling thoughts. Despite running late, I needed to gather myself before heading to work, where I could focus and think clearly, something I couldn't manage at home. Megan's betrayal wasn't impulsive, it was calculated. She had plotted everything, anticipating my shock and ensuring the deck was stacked in her favor. She wanted me to be the villain simply for disapproving of her affair. I dressed quickly and grabbed a box of trash bags, anticipating that Megan would take the boys to her mother's house later in the day. Moving methodically, I emptied my closet and drawers, tossing clothes and essentials into the bags. I gathered a few toiletries from the bathroom and packed them into a smaller bag. After loading everything into my truck, I went back inside. I wasn't leaving just yet. I planned to return after work to spend time with Ethan and Liam. The realization hit me hard. My marriage was truly over. Megan would never again be my wife, my lover, or my confidant. She had chosen someone else. Tears welled uncontrollably, and I sank to the floor of what was once our bedroom, succumbing to grief. At work, I threw myself into my duties, tackling each task with relentless energy. Even through lunch, I pushed forward, desperate to drown out thoughts of home and my crumbling family. Timing chains, fuel injectors, fuel pumps, none of it was too challenging for me to handle. I took on the toughest jobs without complaint, consumed by a single goal: to bury my emotions in work. Eric eventually interrupted me, his voice tinged with concern. "Dude, ease up. You're making the rest of us look like slackers," he joked, though his tone betrayed genuine worry. I managed a weak smile. "Sorry, little brother. Just trying to lose myself in the work. Trying to forget." Eric placed a hand on my shoulder and guided me off the shop floor. "Come on, let's take a break," he said, leading me to the break room. Eric and I had been inseparable since our parents' tragic accident a decade ago. He'd been my best man at my wedding and, 8 years ago, became godfather to my boys, Ethan and Liam. Sitting across from me at the table, he poured 2 cups of hot coffee. It was bland, but the warmth offered a strange sense of comfort. "All right, laid out everything. No holding back," Eric prompted. For the next 10 minutes, I recounted every shameful detail. I described Megan's threats, her calculated manipulation, and her cold determination to strip me of everything while keeping her affair intact. I told him how she boasted to Samantha about Jason and threatened to use the boys as leverage if I didn't comply with her demands. Eric's face twisted with disbelief and anger. He had always thought highly of Megan, believing her to be a virtuous woman and devoted mother. Now, hearing the truth, he was visibly shaken. "Daniel, you've been a rock, an amazing father, reliable provider, and a guy everyone here trusts and respects. What she's done to you is despicable," Eric said, his tone firm. "You can't just let her get away with this." "What can I do?" I replied, my voice hollow. "If I file for divorce, she'll take everything. Child support, alimony, the house, the car. And I'd never risk hurting the boys. They're all I care about. But now she's using them as pawns. That idiot she's with will try to replace me as their father. I feel powerless. To hell with both of them." Eric spat, his anger mounting. "We'll figure this out. First, we find out who he is." "That's easy. I'll make a few calls. Then we'll expose him. You realize you can't take her back, right? She crossed the line. If you let her get away with this, she'll never respect you again. She's someone else's problem now. His words stung, but they were true. A faint smile crossed my face. You're right. She's not my wife anymore. Last night, she made that crystal clear. And with every passing moment, my hatred for her grows stronger than any love I ever felt. We talked a bit more, then wrapped up our shifts. After work, we headed to a nearby bar, not to drown ourselves in alcohol, but to strategize. Eric made a few calls, and I was touched by the support from my friends. They didn't pry. They simply wanted to help. At 7 p.m., I pulled into the driveway of what no longer felt like my home. Inside, Megan sat in her chair, watching Ethan and Liam engrossed in their video game. The scene felt like a cruel charade. Megan glanced at me, her faint smile betraying the contempt she still harbored. I returned her gaze, my face devoid of emotion, before heading to the kitchen. I reheated some leftover chicken and mashed potatoes, though I wasn't hungry. The food served only as a distraction. I planned to speak with the boys about the situation eventually, but Eric advised me to wait. For now, I kept my focus on getting through the evening. Halfway through my meal, Megan joined me at the table. Are you feeling more composed after last night? Can we talk like civilized adults now? She asked, her tone dripping with insincerity. I met her gaze briefly before returning to my food. Civilized adults? How about a cheating woman and her betrayed husband? That's more realistic. She huffed in frustration. Are you going to ignore me now? Acting childish and silent? I expected more from you, Daniel. We need to consider the boys. You're their father, and they need stability. I set my fork down, my voice calm but cutting. Am I? Am I truly their father? Maybe I should confirm that with some tests. Let's keep this civil, Megan. Just a simple statement. Megan's expression darkened with fury, her mouth poised to fire off a sharp retort when I calmly interjected. Watch your tone, Megan. The children might overhear if you start shouting. Remember them. The ones you accused me of neglecting last night when I expressed my frustration? Now it's your turn to reflect on your actions. Think carefully about what you've done to their world. Not only did you indulge in an affair, but you also shattered our entire family. She paused, her voice dropping to a venomous hiss. You didn't seem to take my words to heart last night. I expected you to move past this and return to normal. Nothing has to change at home. I still love you, Daniel. You're my husband, and that hasn't changed. Neither you nor the children will lose anything familiar. I've kept everything discreet. I see Jason when the kids are at school, and you're at work. You have nothing to lose. I'm always here for you. I remained silent, methodically eating, my expression stoic and unreadable. My eyes, however, conveyed everything, and slowly, Megan seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across her face. What do you intend to do? She asked, her voice trembling. Are you going to make this difficult for me? I hoped you loved me enough to grant me this time. I told you last night that Jason doesn't take anything away from you. Why can't you understand that? I'll always support you. I swallowed my food, maintaining my calm. Let's save this discussion for after the kids are in bed. I said evenly. I listened to you last night, despite how uncomfortable it made me. I won't entertain this conversation while the children are awake. Megan seemed to regain some composure and forced a smile. Thank you for that. I think you made some valid points, but your words hurt me. She placed her hand on my shoulder as she passed by, but I flinched involuntarily. The disgust I felt at her touch was impossible to hide, and she quickly withdrew her hand. I spent the evening with Ethan and Liam, trying to maintain normalcy, though the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on me. Megan's actions had destroyed any chance of reconciliation in my mind. Perhaps I could have played the role of a compliant husband, pretending to accept her terms and waiting for her affair to fizzle out. But I knew that wasn't an option. Not now, not ever. Around 9 o'clock, Megan entered the room where I sat. Letting out a heavy sigh, she settled into a chair and smiled. The boys are in bed. They're getting so big, but they still let me tuck them in. They're such good boys, she said wistfully. I nodded. They're wonderful kids. It's unfortunate they'll have to endure so much pain. I don't know how to shield them from it. What do you mean? She asked, frowning. Nothing has to change. Just give me what I want, and we can go back to being the family we've always been. Be patient. It'll be over soon, I promise. You won't lose anything. I love you, Daniel. I want to remain your wife. It's just something I have to do. I gazed at her, the woman I had loved for 8 years, the mother of my children. I had married her because I couldn't imagine life without her. But now, everything was different, and she couldn't understand why I deemed it necessary to walk away. Megan, I began, my voice steady. I listened to you last night. You made your desires clear. You claim you love me and want to remain my wife. You insist Jason doesn't take anything from me. You refuse to share his identity because you believe it's none of my business. And you've outlined the consequences of me seeking a divorce. You've made it abundantly clear that you'll strip everything from me. My home, my finances, even my children, without hesitation. Megan's face twisted in anger, though she couldn't refute my words. Daniel, this isn't about our marriage. You're misinterpreting everything I've said. I still love you. Why can't you trust me? What I heard from you last night wasn't love, Megan, I said coldly. It was disdain. You belittled me, degraded me, and issued premeditated threats. You were fully aware of how I'd react, yet you had your answers ready, as if you'd already decided my place in your plans. You threatened to back me into a corner, thinking I wouldn't fight back. But I told you last night, and I'll say it again, even a rat will fight a cat when it's cornered. With that, I stood and walked toward the kitchen door. As I passed, I paused briefly. I'm going to stay somewhere else tonight. Temporarily. I'll return after work, so the kids won't notice anything right away. Why not stay here? She pleaded. We can't resolve this if you leave. Daniel, please don't go. I love you. I don't want to lose you. I turned to face her, my voice devoid of emotion. I'm sorry, Megan. The only certainty I have is that I no longer love you. Your infidelity destroyed that love. I don't know what's next for me, but I'm sure there's no going back now. Her voice broke as she clung to her final argument. What about your vows, Daniel? To love and cherish me? I nodded slowly. I remember them. I also remember the ones you made, to forsake all others. You broke those vows. You gave what was mine to another man. And with that, you shattered everything we had. So yes, I can walk away. You destroyed my love for you. And now, I'm leaving. I left for Eric's house, where he welcomed me to stay as long as needed. The days that followed were a blur of work and evenings spent with Ethan and Liam. Megan tried to engage me several times, but I walked away each time. Her frustration grew, but I refused to let her provoke me. By week's end, Eric handed me a folder. Inside was a brief report. Jason Cummings, 24 years old, a junior attorney at Lincoln, Rice and Holmes. Divorced 2 years ago, financially stable, residing in a condominium. Megan had visited multiple times that week. Armed with this information, I felt no anger, just cold detachment. Megan's choices were no longer my concern. If she had come to me earlier, maybe things could have been different. But now, all that mattered was what came next. I turned to Eric. What's the plan? I asked. Though the burden was mine, Eric had taken charge with unwavering support. I was fortunate to have him by my side. Soon, this chapter would end, and I could begin anew. True friends are rare, but I was fortunate to have them, and now I needed them more than ever. Eric's voice on the phone was calm, but resolute. Everything's underway. The first move happens tonight. I'll call you once it's set. Just keep your phone close. You can let her know and finally put an end to this mess. Okay. Knowing it had to be done didn't bring relief. This wasn't how I wanted things to go, but Megan and her lover left me no choice. I wasn't a lawyer or a wealthy strategist. I was a mechanic, a hardworking man who had built a life for his family through honest labor. I had loved Megan deeply, but my love wasn't enough for her. Fine. My plan was set, rooted in my world, and she'd soon understand the consequences of her actions. Returning home, I joined my family for dinner as usual. Megan chatted with the boys, and I participated in their conversations and activities, masking my nervousness. After dinner, I played video games with Ethan and Liam, helped them with their homework, and stayed engaged as the typical husband and father. Megan, finishing the dishes, watched us from the kitchen. She seemed at ease, perhaps believing things were settling back to normal. Across town, Jason Cummings left his office, heading to his car. He reflected on his recent encounter with Megan at his place 2 days earlier. She had been unusually eager, agreeing for the first time to take their affair further. When he asked why, she revealed that her husband had discovered their relationship. Shocked, Jason was reassured when Megan dismissed his concerns, claiming her husband wasn't a threat. Jason had brushed off the oddity, focusing instead on the thrill of their time together. As he walked toward his car, passing a dimly lit alley, he suddenly stumbled. Two large men seized his arms, dragging him into the alley. Pinned against the wall, Jason tried to make out their faces beneath black ski masks. A third figure stepped forward, his gloved hand gripping Jason's chin. "You familiar with a woman named Megan Phillips?" the man growled. Jason's blood ran cold. "Her husband," he stammered. "No, I don't know anyone by that name." The response earned him a hard punch to the ribs, knocking the wind out of him. Dazed and struggling to breathe, Jason gasped as the man repeated the question. "You familiar with Megan Phillips?" Terrified, Jason abandoned his lie. "Yes, I know her. Please, I'll stay away. Just let me go." The masked man leaned in, his tone menacing. "You'll never see her again. You'll never contact her. Or her kids. Clear?" Jason nodded frantically. "Crystal clear." The man continued, his voice cold and firm. "We're going to make sure you understand. Men like you who mess with married women need to learn their place." What followed was swift and brutal. Jason endured blow after blow, his groin, his ribs, his jaw, until mercifully he blacked out. When he regained consciousness, he found himself in Memorial Hospital's emergency room. Though his injuries weren't life-threatening, the pain was excruciating. As he lay in his hospital bed, Jason whispered a prayer, grateful to be alive. He recalled the words he was ordered to relay. "I deeply apologize, Mrs. Phillips. It was my fault, and I regret it. I will cease all contact with you and your children. I'm sorry our paths ever crossed. Goodbye." Repeating the phrases in his mind, Jason vowed never to pursue another married woman. Meanwhile, at home, my phone buzzed. Seeing Eric's name, I stepped away to answer. "It's done. Lesson 1 completed. He's in the hospital," Eric said simply before ending the call. Returning to the living room, I smiled faintly. Megan noticed, but didn't comment, interpreting my demeanor as a sign of good news. Later, she took the boys upstairs, glancing at me with a hopeful expression. I nodded, assuring her I'd be there when she returned. She smiled broadly, seemingly at ease. When Megan came back, carrying coffee and cups, she settled across from me, eager to talk. "I feel relieved," she said, her tone soft and almost affectionate. "I love you, Daniel. I don't want to lose you. Not over something as trivial as this. We can move past it." I studied her carefully as she spoke, her beauty still undeniable. She had been the woman I'd envisioned growing old with. But that dream had been shattered. Now it was time to face reality. "Megan," I began, my voice steady, "I know your lover's name. Jason Cummings, a junior associate at Lincoln, Rice and Holmes. I know about him, and I know about your meetings this week." Her face paled, her lips parting to respond, but I held up a hand. "No, let me finish. You threatened me with divorce. You threatened to take everything from me, my home, my boys, my life. Your exact words were, 'I'll take everything you have.'" Those words, dripping with contempt, shattered our marriage. She tensed, her shoulders stiffening, fear flickering in her eyes. "Jason has been warned," I continued. "He'll never see you again. He's been explicitly told to stay away from my sons. And I'll be filing for divorce, citing infidelity. There will be no spousal support for you, Megan. Child support, yes, but only for the boys' needs. You'll need to work for anything beyond that." Megan's face twisted with anger. "You're delusional if you think I'll agree to this. I told you, I'll take everything, just like I promised." I smirked faintly. "Why don't you call Jason?" "Oh, wait, you might need to dial the hospital. He's immemorial, and I'm sure he's had a change of heart. What did you do? She whispered, horrified. What happened to Jason? I've been home with you all evening, Megan, I said coolly. What could I possibly have done? But I'd suggest giving him a call. Shaken, Megan retreated to the next room. I heard her muffled voice on the phone before she returned, tears streaming down her face. Collapsing into a chair, she whispered, He told me it's over. He doesn't want to see me again. Good, I replied, setting down my newspaper. This weekend, I'll speak with the boys about the divorce. They're young, but they'll eventually understand. As I stood to leave, I glanced at Megan one last time. You said this affair would be short-lived. You thought we'd return to normal. Maybe one day, you'll find someone who's open to that kind of life. Someone who'll indulge your fantasies. But that's not me. Best of luck. And with that, I walked away, leaving Megan sobbing in the dimly lit room. Actions have consequences, and she was finally facing hers.